Dear IEA Madras chapter members and other attendees to this webinar. This is a webinar organized by Institute of Internal Auditors India Madras chapter jointly with Surana and Surana International Attorneys and IMO All India Manufacturers Organization. It is going to be a panel discussion on the topic regulatory aspects of safety, health and environment audit, popularly known as SHE audit, in MSME and manufacturing industries. We have eminent panelists, Mr. R. Radhakrishnan, Zonal Vice President, South IMO, and Mr. Rajsingh Moses Kagawa, MD, Allison Transmission India Private Limited, and Ms. Ramapriya Gopalakrishnan, Advocate, High Court of Madras, then Vishal Chaturvedi, Partner, Deloitte, and the panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Vinod Surana, Managing Partner and CEO of Surana and Surana International Attorneys. I warmly welcome every one of you, the delegates, and also the panelists, the eminent speakers, and the moderator, Dr. Vinod Surana. With this brief welcome address, I would like to request the moderator, Dr. Vinod Surana, to take over. Over to Dr. Vinod. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vidyadharan. My humble greetings to this extremely distinguished panel and our participants representing the MSME and industry from all parts of the country, from different sectors. This is the 7th in the knowledge series of Surana and Surana this year, a series which is intended to give insights on various topics of interest and importance and is meant for our colleagues, clients, and our friends in the industry. Today's webinar is about safety, health, and environment audits, a subject very close to my heart. We are going to be speaking about the regulatory aspects. As we all know, the Constitution of India provides for rights of its citizens and lays down in the directive principles provisions for securing the health, safety, well-being, both economic and social, as well as humane working conditions of the workers. The directive principles of state policy also direct the government to protect the environment and biodiversity of the country. The Constitution, along with the various international instruments which India is a signatory to, show the government's commitment to ensuring social justice and the economic growth of all workers and employees. Doing so in an environmentally safe and healthy working atmosphere. The basic aim of safety, health, and environment. Sorry, I hear some kind of an echo. The basic aim of the SHE legislation in India is to devise laws to provide safety standards to protect the basic needs of the workers. Today's subject, SHE audit, safety, health and environment audit, can be described as an implementation checklist cum plan of the regulatory provisions within a PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. And the cycle is meant for constant implementation, constant improvement. She audits are a structured process of collecting independently verifiable information on the effectiveness, efficiency, and reliability of the entire working environment in an industry, and it provides for a systematic way for taking corrective actions for continuous improvement and prevention of any kind of deviation. I find it very fascinating to speak on this subject, as I personally have more than 20 years of experience in implementing and auditing various aspects of safety, health, and environment in my own law firm. My law firm is Asia's first ISO 9000 certified and the world's first ISO 14000 certified law firm. Though there was no compulsion to go in for these certifications, it was purely a voluntary effort. I can say that the constant implementation and audits of these standards have woven into the fabric of the firm concepts such as quality, workplace safety, customer feedback and satisfaction, environmental protection, and they have also helped us manage rapid growth. Efficiency and productivity have no doubt gone up by leaps and bounds due to the concentration of our thoughts and our energies in the review of every small operational detail. The benefits of these elements of audit and implementation, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. I look forward to many more examples and anecdotes from our panelists. In 1999-2000, we used to occupy an office space of about 1,200 square feet, and we used to have an electricity bill of almost 1 lakh. Today we occupy 20,000 square feet and our electricity bill is less than 2 lakhs. Office space has gone up 16 times, the bill has only doubled. The impact this can have on the entire environment can only be imagined. Clients are assured and in turn expect the highest quality of work. There is a quality pull from the client side and a quality push from the side of my professionals. And I think this kind of ecosystem has worked favorably for all stakeholders. In the ISO 9000, we have looked at and emphasized upon workplace safety and workflow design, which has resulted in improvement of productivity and ease of working in the workplace. I believe that these audits inculcate in the auditee and the auditee's mind concepts such as reuse, recycle, review, and reduce as a natural corollary. So therefore, today I speak before all of you with the greatest conviction due to personal experience. I am very happy that we are partnering with 2 esteemed institutions who are well known for their work in promoting safety, environment, and health in Indian industry. The Institute of Internal Auditors is a leader in certification, education, and research for professionals engaged in evaluating an organization's operations and control, thereby contributing to the organization's productivity and profits, and also to all-round stakeholder benefits. IIA, as it is called, was established in 1941 in the United States, and today it is present in over 140 countries with more than 200,000 members. The Indian chapter was opened about 25-30 years ago, We have more than 3,000 members spread across 6 chapters across the country, and our membership is from trade, industry, and the professions. Our other partner is the All India Manufacturers Organization, an institution founded in 1941, 80 years ago, by the very famous visionary and Bharat Ratna Sir Vishveshwaraya. It is an organization to promote Indian industry and has been organized by the central and state governments for its representation of Indian industry in policy making. Over the last 70 years, 80 years, IMO has been playing a significant role in aligning the interests of industry and the government through frequent interactions, policy inputs, etc. IMO is today represented in 75 central and state government committees and policy making bodies. To address today's gathering, we have 4 highly experienced and articulate speakers who will provide several real-life examples and anecdotal evidence to highlight the values and virtues of a well-implemented safety, health, environment audit and how it is supposed to go beyond the regulatory requirements and how a well-implemented SHE audit system will benefit every stakeholder. I believe they will also speak and highlight concepts like sustainability, global warming, digitization and technology-driven audits, and stakeholder values. To quickly lay the format, we have about 100 minutes left. I will request each of our panelists to share with us their views, their experiences, highlighting various aspects of SHE audit in about 15 minutes each. And I believe we will then be left with about 40 minutes of very serious question and answer session where our participants can ask specific questions and go home after this webinar with implementable points in their respective organizations. So with those introductory remarks and having set the field, I would now like to call upon our first panelist, who is also the most experienced among all of us, Mr. R. Radhakrishnan, who is the Senior Vice President of All India Manufacturers Organization, South Zone. He is also a graduate in economics with postgraduate qualifications in labor and administrative law. For 32 years, he worked in an MNC where he joined as a junior personnel officer and retired as a senior vice president of HR and admin. He has been running his own business for the last, I think about 12-13 years. He is into HR, information technology, and telecom space. Mr. Radhakrishnan is also a member of the Tamil Nadu Labour Welfare Board, the Tamil Nadu Board on Minimum Wages Advisory Committee, and other committees of the state government. So over to you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. Mr. Radhakrishnan, I am told, will be speaking on the safety in workplace, problems and practical solutions. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you, sir. And also for the participants and for everybody. Just today, I am going to talk about only on the workplace problems and how we solve. There are a lot of theoretical as well as the more authenticated scientific points will be said by my other speakers. But I'm going to share only my practical experience, what are all the experience I had in my throughout my service of 35 years or around 40 years. I worked in almost 17 years in a foundry and 10 years in a textile industry. Afterwards, I was in automobile industry, then heavy vehicle industry. Like it's almost I cover all type of industries. So wherever I go, definitely being a HR person and a legal person, if at all any accident happen or anything happen, it will fall on only, those days it was only the personal department, not HR department. Now only the HR came. When I started my career in 1972, it was only personal. It will fall on the heads of the personal department. So it is obvious we have to improve our knowledge on how to prevent accidents, how to avoid total accident. That was part and parcel of our day-to-day work. So based on that, I learned a lot of things. Even now I am learning. Even as an entrepreneur, today also I am facing the same problem what I was in service in my own company. So that is some of the few examples I want to share with you, the specific accidents and how it was happened and how it was rectified. Maybe it may be based on the regulatory rules or beyond that. And for each and every incident, we cannot follow the regulatory rules strictly. Sometimes we have to bend. Such a way only we have rectified and we eradicated such accidents totally. So mainly in my opinion, the accidents will happen only by the few of only maximum majority of 5 reasons. One is lack of awareness among the staff and also the supervisory staff. I don't want to blame only the employees. Again, we are all, as an employer, we are also responsible for that. We are not bothered about the consequences initially. Once it was happened, then only we are going back and all what are things and everything. All employees, even today, I am doing the same thing as an employer. Though I am criticizing today, but the same thing I am doing. Another point is safety items and the replacement of safety-oriented items. The main reason for the accidents in the either engineering industries are only based on the replacement, the failure of replacement of the safety items, safety-oriented items or involved items. Another point is overconfidence of employees as well as the supervisory staff. Whatever it is, let us do it. What if anything happen, let us see. Such a that type of attitude is a lot of the employees and the supervisory staff and all are having. Another things, using of unsuitable safety items. For this, I almost even today I am struggling with my clients. Almost I am fighting with the clients, but I could not succeed. So one by one, I want to tell for this awareness, creating awareness. Take for example in a foundry. There are mostly in foundry, the induction furnace, the splitting of and cracking of metals, molten metals will spread across things. Even if any burst happen inside the furnace. If you analyze that how it is happened, normally it won't happen. For the normal scrap, it won't happen. But when the people are segregating the scrap, they are not apply their mind. Even the small SOG observers and our domestic AC compressor tanks are very, very dangerous in a foundry. Without crushing it or without cutting it, if you are loading in the furnaces, definitely it will end with a major accident. It was happened several times in our foundry. When I was in foundry, it was happened. It can be avoided by two ways. One, applying the mind on segregating the scrap. Normally, when we are fixing the workload, we are not giving any tolerance for the segregating the scrap. Whatever unloaded in the scrapyard, just we are taking and loading in the furnace. Because there is no time, we have to fulfill the norms. the workers are also in the mind of getting incentives and all. So this, for this, what we done, first we segregated the workforce in two ways. For the furnace loading alone, we formed two teams, one exclusively for segregating the scrap, another loading the furnace. And we introduced some educational, minimum education qualification for the loading people, because then only they will know the consequences and the seriousness of loading and the following the procedures. When the furnace are loading, they have to follow a lot of things. They have to cover the furnace as soon as the loading is over. But normally they are not doing, because when the normally every 5 to 10 minutes they have to load, fill the furnace as soon as till it comes to the maximum level. But every time they don't want to close the door and open the door, to avoid that type of, normally they are not used. So for that, we fix a limit switch in the, so okay, but in the heat, the limit switch will be damaged. But frequently we told nothing. It is those days it was only 5 rupees or 10 rupees. Even today it is only 15 rupees. It can be whenever they open, a light will be flickering in the control furnace control board. So definitely they once either this operator not seeing, or somebody will see and tell that to close the furnace. In such a once it was closed, even by mistake they loaded the sag observer or a small totally covered tank. Now, even if it is burst, the cover will avoid major accidents. It will come out of the molten metal will come out within that furnace and the cover. In between cover there was only 6 inches gap is there. Through the gap only it will come, and it won't any major accident will not happen. Such a way we avoided. In the induction furnace manufacturers original, there is no such a limit switch or anything. By experience, our maintenance people has done it, and after almost it will take some 6 or 7 years. Whenever they are telling no, who will, the stores people or the costing people, everybody will accept. Why unnecessary against the original design? Why you are installing some in audit objections or something? So, but finally I intervene and convince the management, and we frequently buy a lot of bulk of switches, and after that it was totally avoided. And another thing, in the same foundry, when the people are pouring the molten metal in the boxes, they are supposed to wear the closed goggles. The management is providing goggles, but the workers will not wear it, since the sweating in the forehead will close the eyes. Then we finally introduced the goggles, but those goggles have not any sponge or absorbing element in that. So we ourselves designed, and with the sponge covered by the cotton cloth, it was fixed inside the goggles, and it was. Then they started to use the goggles. So normally, because of this, most of accidents happened in the eye affected accidents are totally avoided. Such awareness, but it has to be, yes, wearing goggles is inconvenient, no doubt, for all. Even today, wearing the mask, we are facing a lot of problem, and whenever we are speaking and all. But in spite, we are wearing, because the necessity comes, we are wearing. So we created that necessity, and it was avoided. Another major accidents are happened in this total. I told that the overconfidence and the indisciplined attitude of the people. Take for example, in a grinding area, grinding department, there is a pakka side cover in each and every grinding machine in both sides. But when that God is really inconvenient to work for, okay, they have to practice it with it, but they are not ready to do it because it is piece rate basis. Normally they are not monthly paid people, they are only piece rated people. So they want to do more pieces, since whatever are the inconvenient, they will remove. But what happened is, when they are, see, in the foundries or any other engineering industries, the component weight will be around 4 kgs, less than 4 kgs only. When they are taking and grinding and putting in the job rest, normally sometimes it will happen that the job will got in between the job rest as well and the grinding wheel. But naturally, the grinding wheel crack, but by the motor is also continuously running. By running, it will crack and spread across. Either it will go sideways or go up to the height of 10 or 15 feet. Again, it will fall on the heads of the people, or it will hit on the chest of the operator. Such accidents in my 17 years experience in a foundry, for the first 8 years, I faced 11 fatal accidents. And madam knows what will be the legal consequences once the fatal accident happen. The employer can't sleep. The employees and the unions, everybody will demand for 2 days leave for condolence, and 2 days production will go. Everything will go. So for this, we introduced a very simple system. The guard will be fitted by the bolt and nuts. We remove one bolt nut. In that, we fix a long handle lock. Whatever we are using in the gates, main gates, we are using there are will be the height, and such locks we provide, and the key will be only within the maintenance department. Even in the night shift and all, it is very simple solution. Once we introduce, there is no such but parallelly what we have done is, every week we segregated the batches. Almost 50 people are grinding in the grinding department alone. We divided into 5 groups. Every Saturday afternoon, one safety class is a must. We made it a compulsory. We provided the salary also for them immediately after the shift is over. Because when during the after the shift hours, without giving anything, if you are asking, definitely after all, we are all human beings, nobody will attend, and they don't want to show any interest on it. So with the salary we provided, almost for 2 years we continuously done it. And for the new employees also we done it. Totally that type of accidents have been totally eradicated. When I came out of the foundry, almost yearly 1 incident or 2 incidents such a way only this. This is in foundry. Then again I told the reasons for using the unsuitable items, safety items. That problem now I am facing in my own company. For climbing the towers, normally they have to use the full body harness. Safety belt they have to use. Yes, our employees are ready to use it. But provided what TRI rule says, you have to use only the PN75 model. That PN75 model is 2.9 kgs. And whereas the same capacity, same type of belt with other model and the same strength, again, the most important in the safety belt is the strength. Same with the same strength, it is available with 1.2 kg, but without some extra fittings. And really, if you go through the process, work process, that extra fittings are not necessary for it. And abruptly, they are refused to accept other bills. Then finally, one of my client is a decision maker in all India basis. So I went and meet them, and both the things practically how these people are using, and then that client agreed. But try till date they are not agreed. But unfortunately, our employees are not ready to use it. Though the cost wise, again, here the politics and the unethical issues happen in that I can't tell openly. This is the 75 cost about 13,000 rupees, whereas it is cost about only 1,500 rupees. I think you can imagine what happened, what will happen. But now, no other way, we are using only 1.2 kgs because we got a letter from all the employees. It cannot be used since when the climbing with the 3 kgs of weight, climbing for 200 feet, it is practically not possible. And it is possible, provided it is very much suitable. For that, I am not telling that 75 model is not good. It is a good one, but it is suitable only for the persons going heights by lift and sitting in a platform doing any work they can use. Or the whitewashing persons who are hanging from the side of the walls and they are doing, so that the all sit arrangements and all these extra fittings will helpful for them, but not for the persons working in the cranes or any other telecom towers and all. But this is when how to the government has to, we appeal to the government also. Several our association gave a proper representation to the try everything. It is in the process. I think we are expecting it. And also again there's unsuitable things. We are okay for welding purposes. We are asking them to use the face shield. But again, there's the problem of sweating. And also the handle, where if you see the brands, you can see the international brands are having side handles, whereas our most of the brands in India available is backside handle. That are all the practical difficulties. But what we done in an engineering industry, in the automobile industry, we purchased from all the way, we imported from them, and also it is life also was. So now we are not telling they started to use. These are all the accidents happen and how it is. Another thing, the major, we are going for ISO, we are going for all the regulatory systems and all the systems. But again, we are not depending on the we have to develop our own team. We used to call us an operational audit team. A team consists of 3 to 5 persons and 3 teams. They will be audited entire the safety on a rotational basis. And they don't know where they are going to audit, where they are going to do, which shift they are going to audit. Even the team don't know. Only the HR person will know it. Among the team, one HR person, one technical person, and also the employee, the field employee. Such a way we formed teams, and all these teams they will cover all the 3 shifts. If the night shifts they are coming for audit, next day they can take off. Such a way we arranged. So naturally anything missing and all the misuses will be totally avoided. And finally, one more point regarding this compressor tanks. Again, normally it was tested by the government of Tamil Nadu or any government across India, any government authorities, and they are giving certificates. But the pressure meters, normally as soon as immediately the inspection is over, they will remove and put it in the box. Next inspection time only they will fix it. This is happening in all engineering industry except the systematic and all. But once the tank, any reason some 20 days back, one tank burst accident was happened near in Gumudipudi. The reason, as per the government, they are not even tested the things. These are all some practical difficulties how we are facing and the things. And finally, yes, material handling again. Only one point. The material handling, when the engineering industry, when the material handling things are happening either in textile or engineering industry, they will load up to the beyond the height of their. For that, we made it, when though it is in the boxes, they are putting in the components in the boxes and they are boxes. It can be safe height is only 3 boxes, they will load 5 boxes. For that, anyhow, it cannot be avoided sometimes. So we introduced a belt system. From handle to the bottom, it will cover the boxes, and we, like our car seat belt, we provide a locking system, and it was so it was avoided in that manner. These are all the only few of my experience, and more theoretically and authenticated things, I think my other friends will take it care. Thank you, sir, for
Thank you.
giving up.
Thank you, Mr. Radhakrishnan. It
Thank
shows
you.
the wealth of practical experience which you have got from the grassroots level till the top over the last 3 to 4 decades. Thank you for sharing your very practical experiences. Now I call upon our next speaker, Mr. Rajsingh Moses, who is the Managing Director of Allison India Transmission India Private Limited. Mr. Moses has over 3 decades of experience with profit and loss and return of investment responsibility. He has a very successful track record, which includes startups and greenfield projects. He is known specifically for employee engagement and CSR all over the country. His company, Allison Transmissions, was the benchmark by the Tamil Nadu government for health and safety during the pandemic. In fact, I was really surprised that under his guidance and leadership, his company achieved zero lockdown, zero infection during the entire pandemic period. His success stories in creating wealth from waste, recycling and reusing resources are spoken about very often in industry circles. He has a very exciting presentation filled with anecdotes and practical examples. We all look forward to hearing you, Mr. Moses. Over to you.
All right. Good morning to everyone, and thanks to Dr. Vinod Surana for giving us an opportunity to speak about some of the aspects related to safety, health, and environment. I just want to give you a small gist. Ours is a 13-year-old organization. We are a greenfield project company, and we started from the ground zero to what we are today. But on the safety, health, and environment, let me tell you a few zeros here. We have a machining, we have a heat treatment, we have an assembly line. Name any gases in the world, it is there in the plant, and we are an orange zone facility. Today, in 13 years, we record a lot of zeros. 0 recordables, 0 lost times, 0 incidents, 0 warranties, 0 discharge facility, almost our attrition to nil. And with about 700 model changeovers, we are at a decimal point of 0.28% on scrap, which is almost a 0. With a lot of zeros in 13 years, organization winning 3 National Golden Peacock Award, I just want to share with the team some of the best practices that we have gone through it and we have experienced it. And I want to share it with the team, the success story here. While the regulatory requirements are a must, and I respect the compliance part of it, there is something called beyond that, what is expected in the organization is what I'm going to be sharing in the next 15 minutes. It's purely visual. If you need it, you can always reach us. And if there is anything that you need to visit our plant, you're most welcome to do it. With that, let me start the presentation. Can you all see the presentation? I just want to know if you all could see the presentation.
Yes.
All right. With that said, I am moving on to the three contents of the best practices: the safety, the health, and the environment. Let me move on to the first aspect called safety. We just now heard about the various accidents and incidents that happen at the plant, but I would like to put it across like this: safety in terms of people perspective, safety in terms of system perspective, safety in terms of business perspective. Let me put this very clearly here. There is nothing called safety that comes under human resource or the safety officer. Safety belongs to everyone. Safety belongs right at the gate, from a security person to the gardener to every person. So I call, if I have 300 people in the organization, I call 300 safety officers. We call them and we empower them. So let me go to the first slide, safety on people perspective. Slide number 4. You will see 4 sections, and it has got very different aspects to that. First section, you see on the top left something called small group activity. Generally, a small group activity or a kaizen, which we call it as improvement activities, is predominantly done on the manufacturing side or continuous improvement and things like that. In this organization, we take small group activity specifically related to safety. We want safety related projects. We want safety improvements. It is a must. If you do not bring continuous improvements on safety, that quarter, we do not allow or encourage people to start activities related to small group activity. So what are we different here? Encourage employees, build a group that comes with the blood of improving safety in the work zone, no matter whether you are at a zero recordable or incident. Next comes the serial number 2 on the same slide, something called S report. I want everyone to look into it. Very simple concept. Right from a gardener to the driver to everyone out there are expected. There is a small slip given. You just have to fill your name, the location where you find some issues, and then you submit it to the management. We encourage, it can be in English, Tamil, Hindi, anything for that matter. We categorize this as ABC based on the intensity. We reward for the people who bring safety concerns to the table, and the entire thing gets collated. Believe me, though the plant is at zero concerns or zero incidents, in a month, in a year, we generate more than 500 to 600 S reports. So what happens? Something, I look at it like this: 250 sets of eyes looks into the plant rather than one safety officer or one human resource department or one management staff looks at it. So every day, 250 sets of eyes looks in and around the facility. They put the report, we encourage, and we pay for that safety report. Just by saying a switch is broken or something you find abnormal, you get rewarded. That's the encouragement or the motivation that we provide. And within the next few days, that S report has to be closed. So there is a closed loop system where we follow. The third one is the sunrise meeting. Generally, sunrise meeting is a morning meeting that happens everywhere. Can you see a guy with a green cap? That's the safety officer. Every zone, every employee, every day, every time in the morning has to speak one point on safety. That means if there are 250 people, every day 250 points of discussion takes place. That's the people perspective of driven activity that we do. The fourth one that you see is called as the red tag activity. Nothing, 20 minutes in a week. We play the music system on the floor and in the office. The reason why we play is we don't want somebody to be on the phone or in a meeting. We play it so loud, we give you small red tags. All you need to do is the place where you work, find out things that you don't want. tag it with red tag, and keep it in a common place. That's all we want you to do. You know what happens because of this? Unwanted tools that were missing, unwanted things in the wrong place, things we lost, everything came out. At one stage, we could come out with 400 staplers. The employees are 250, 400 staplers came out as excess. So you can imagine how much more we would have bought. So tools that we lost, things that we thought we lost, everything came out in 20 minutes. I'm just asking 20 minutes of your time on your table, on your work spot. Find out things that you don't want. Believe me, I was the biggest culprit, and from my table, many things came out. So very simple employee engagement initiatives. 250 sets of eyes looks at it. 250 reports gets generated. 250 reward points are provided. And 250 people are empowered. Management closes the point. What is the end result? We get more than 700 to 1,000 points in a 6 months category, and we close all those issues. That's how in 13 years, 0 incidents, 0 recordables, and 0 lost time. With that, I'm moving on to the next slide. Safety on system perspective. What you saw was people. Now people are instigated, people are influenced, people are driven, and people are motivated. Now what comes is the system. What is system we are talking about? System is nothing but, we are talking about talked about the man. Now we are talking about the machines. Every time when a machine comes, the OEM or the manufacturer says, these are the safety practices within this, and this is how we do it. You know what we do? Again, there is something called red tag process. We form a cross-functional team, which is an industrial engineer, a manufacturing, a production, a safety officer, right? A quality guy, and a utility maintenance guy. All 6-member team form a cross-functional department. They form a cross-functional team. They go through the machine in and out on the pneumatics, electrical, hydraulics, machine guards to ergonomics to everything. All will certify that machine 100% in all aspects. Utility guy will look at it in terms of utilities. Ergonomic guy will look at it. Industrial engineering guy will look at the ergonomics. Safety guy will look at it on safety perspective. So every eye looks at it rather than the project guy. And they sign every machine, every pump, every motor, every control equipments, every lab equipments, and so forth. What happens? System is viewed 360-degree appraisal. System gets stabilized. System is certified. It's a very painful process. Every person will come out with issues. Once we close those issues, that's when a machine gets triggered on. That's the system perspective that I'm talking about. Now, when I move to slide number 6, I want you to see this, and I encourage every industry to please do this. And you see on the screen 36 files with a picture on each file. There are 36 modules. Please understand, trip hazard, containment area, confinement zone, ladders, height working, fire, like that. There is 36. These are the 36 activities that can take place in a plant as an accident or an incident. 36 champions govern this. 36 formats and procedures, laid down procedures are inside this. Regularly, every month, every module is reviewed. That means if there is a ladder, or if there is a height, or if there is a confined space, or if it is a trip hazard, that particular safety module champion comes in with his cross-functional team. He dissects that area and he gets that activity completed. Very simple. There is no safety officer alone here. There is no HR department here. It is collateral with everyone coming in together, and 36 module champions. Now you might ask, are these the people lifelong? No, we rotate them into another module. We put them into the next shoe so that they understand the problems in the next set of setup. So that's how the 36 module champion govern it. 36 becomes self-directed work team, no supervisor at all. 36 champions presents it in front of the management. What are the activity? He or she is responsible. It includes health too. You are most welcome to come and see this plant. This was the success mantra for us in terms of people, system, process, name anything. This was well appreciated. by the auditors in every manner. So I would suggest that we follow something this. I am very open to open the gate and share all these documents with any organization for that matter. I'm moving on to slide number 7. Now, safety on business perspective. When a people are influenced, when a people are empowered, when the people are positioned accordingly and given the appreciation, they take that in their hand and they become the self-directed work team. We saw the systems in place. Now we put this in business perspective. Can you see on the chart that you see there, KPI and KAI? That is nothing but key performance indicators and key activity indicators. Only when you do key activities, your key performance indicators will be good. There is no point in just like that saying recordable is this much, incidents are this much got reduced. Instead, when you do the activities, what do I mean by activities? Safety modules, safety committees, continual improvements, health awareness talks, lockout tagouts, projects, caissons, and every bit of activity related ones. When you do it, your key performance indicators that are the near miss or first aid, recordables, lost work, those are your KPIs that becomes very good. Please understand, without key activity indicators not in proper place, your key performance indicators cannot be good. So for that, your people and your system are your key activity indicators. When your people and the systems are enabled, your automatic key performance indicator becomes good. That's how in 13 years, we would have invited more than 100 industries related to safety aspects. We are an ISO 45001. Previously, it was OSHA's 18001. And we have done every bit of, we have won the national award, state award. We are not worried about the awards. What we are worried about is the people, is the system, is the KPI, and is the KAI working on the business aspects. End of the day, every employee in 13 years without a scratch coming out with this kind of a success model is what I wanted to share it with the team related to safety. I'm moving to the next one called health. When we all are safe and safe ambience, and something came across called COVID. And you need to understand, we make automatic transmissions, which is an essential product. We export to the Asia Pacific region. We cannot stop. So our plant in Varagadam was one of the organization, very few organization, which never had a lockdown. We don't know what is lockdown. In fact, work from home, a video conference from home, for me, this is the first time. I'm learning today on this. Otherwise, we worked all days. What did we do something different that helped us to avoid a spread? Imagine about 250 people, several millions of parts, export, so much coming in and going out. How did we manage in the organization in terms of health? I'm going to talk to you with 4 things quickly. COVID excellence model, source of contamination, zero spread, and zero infection at site. I'm straight away going to slide number 9. This is the excellence model that we created. Onto the screen that you see, the left side 3 and the right side is another 3. Standardization, prevention, disinfection, social distancing, monitoring, and isolation room. Now the 6 sections, how did we work on is what we are going to do it. Let me tell you one thing. We followed the manufacturing process in this COVID excellence model. Source of contamination that we have in a machine or a source of quality concern that we have in our product. Same way, source of infection is the one we killed it at the source point. Now, how did we do it? I'll show you in slide number 10. First comes standardization. You see a visual factory here. A standard operating procedure was created, completely visual. There is nothing somebody needs to read. When you walk, your floor directs you, your board directs you. You don't have to touch anything. Your fingers and hands are used only to run the machine, and we followed that. Number 2, how did we bring in the standardization? We digitalized it. We created something called QR code system on sanitization. When you do not do that activity, your QR code will alert the entire system on the phone that so-and-so has not done the activity. So source point we identified, and in the source point itself, we created the standardization first. Then I move on to slide number 11, prevention awareness that we brought in. How did we bring in the prevention awareness? On to the top left, you will see a lot of roll calls at that time taking place. Security, drivers, housekeeping, cooking, and operators, that too machining line, assembly line, heat treatment, utility. Simultaneously, like when I was in the Air Force, when we start our day-to-day practice at 7 a.m. in the morning, the first thing that happens is roll call or the briefing that takes place. It's only 5 to 7 minutes of your valuable time. Take 10 minutes. We put everybody at a distance. We do a roll call. We talk to them about the prevention and awareness on a daily basis. At that time, 9 different zones took place. Then the second thing that we did was we eliminated the use of hands everywhere. Foot pedals were used for all the doors, 300 doors. Foot pedal for water dispensers. All handles, 600 handles we removed from the door. And shop floor audits took place. Visual signages were placed. And that's what you see here. Everything was done at zero cost. I will tell you how we did it. This is slide number 11. When I move to slide number 12, take a look at it, prevention and awareness. Right from a security driver, gardener, to the cook, to me, this was something as 10 points that were given, and you are supposed to bring all these 10 items every day to factory. You carry it in a pouch. It has a sanitizer. It has your around area sanitizer, zinc tablets, Lemsi, COVID keys 7 is very important. You have to hang it. And you have a flask for hot water, regular water, and we give everybody a steam inhaler. 5 minutes of steam inhaler, we put a music, they have to do a steam inhalation. And we also encourage people to get vaccinated, and we rewarded those people. Today, my company is more than 95% vaccinated, right? And we had a zero spread. Even though you are vaccinated, without these 10 items, even the managing director cannot enter inside the gate. So we brought this prevention awareness into the plant. Now I move on to the slide number 13 called disinfection. How did we do the disinfection? It's not just a pure fumigation. There was an electronic code pasted everywhere, right from the soap to the disinfectant to the water coming out from the shower to every spot. We made it very clearly. It is all not by hand. It is all by foot or it is by sensor. The entire 100+ taps were made sensor fixed. Entire area, nobody touches anything. And that's the system we follow. And that gave us a phenomenal results related to that. I'm moving on to the fourth one called isolation room. When we could curtail the source of infection, when we could bring in QR code, when we could motivate people, when we give them the right resources, what for we need this isolation room. Slide number 14, what you see as an isolation room remains as isolation room. No one has entered into this room at all so far in the last 18 months. So I take pride in saying, when we put systems, standardize it, empower the people, give the required resources, isolation room becomes a waste. It's just for the formal purpose we use it, and we have not utilized it so far. It's a beautiful room. We keep it as is. No one has entered inside. Slide number 15. Here is what we do the final thing called monitoring and screening. We have a 5-point temperature. Moses coming out of home, 1 temperature taken, getting down at factory 2nd, 12 o'clock, 3rd temperature, 5 o'clock when he is boarding the vehicle, and at 6:37 when he lands at home, when he gets off the vehicle, 5 temperature recordings are taken. Every driver is provided sufficient mask, checkpoints were put. So source of infection, any kind of a variation that is observed, that was stopped at the source point, that eliminated in having any spread into the plant. Finally, social distancing. We all know about it. We defined it. It was very clear. We followed a 3C concept. Constant container in a constant location with a constant quantity. Same way, constant person in a constant location with a constant number of people, and dedicated people in a dedicated location and at a dedicated time is what we found in our social distancing activity. That led to zero infection spread in the plant. That's how we worked on the health standpoint. So you could see something very different we used. We digitalized, we empowered the people, we motivated, source of contamination or infection was stopped, and thereby the spread stopped, and we could run the facility with zero stop. I'm telling you that the Kanjipuram collector benchmarked Alice in India facility And we made a 60-slide presentation across all industries. We can share the same one with all these details to you. Finally, on the environment, I'm going to take only 5 minutes here. Clean technologies, there are few things that I want to talk here. Clean technology, energy initiatives, water conservation, wealth out of waste. I'll quickly go into it. First is clean technology. What did we do here? If you could see the screen, it's pretty self-explanatory. First of all, any machine that we buy, we don't buy machine with coolant oil. We buy dry machining. Can you see on the left side, second one, we could save 41,000 liters of coolant oil so far. We never used any kind of primary bulk storage alone. We had a secondary containment activity. Plant runs on a renewable energy, wind and solar. We could save ton of money. And there is a rule within the organization that every year we have to improve the packaging, reduce the wood, and use the natural lighting, and use gravity conveyors. Most of the places conveyors were stopped. We used normal gravity flow conveyors. And the best thing that we brought in was closed loop water system, wherein the existing water gets recycled in all machines and coolants, and we reuse it again and again. Imagine 11.3 million liters of water we saved, 11.3 million. And that's the kind of a clean technology we followed that you see in slide number 18. I'm moving on to a very interesting factor. It is worth looking into it for 3 to 4 minutes. Wealth out of waste. I want to tell you, not a single waste from the plant goes out through the scrapyard. Not a single waste. So every waste we utilize it. We used our 12.8 tons of scrap wooden pallet. And you want to know what we transformed? I'm moving on to slide number 20. What you see on slide number 20 was done at zero cost. We just had carpenters to do it. Printouts were taken internally. Can you believe all these are waste wooden pallets that we throw in a truck and send it as a scrap? Was used internally. I'm being very serious. Can you see at the center portion how those waste wood are wrapped and then created and transformed? Those stickerings were all done in-house. Zero spending on this. Printouts, wood, everything internally. And recently we made a center of excellence on the bottom right, you can see, which is completely with the waste wood. We call it as wealth out of waste. And this is something we are very, very passionate about it. We made furnitures to schools. We built classrooms with waste wood. You want to know, 300 benches and tables were provided to the children. If I had left that wood, it would have gone to scrapyard. And instead it got transformed into benches. We stopped buying furnitures. We created this visual factory using wealth out of waste. I'm moving on to slide number 21. Very important. Water is scarce. Chennai faces scarcity. What did we do? We did 3 things. First of all, we made entire plant waterless urinals. No water. So we could save tons and tons of water. Then all the taps, 175 taps, we fixed it with atomizer that sprays the water when you want to wash hands. Then COVID came. I don't know what to say. It's a blessing in disguise. We put a sensor based, and now water comes only when you put your hand near the sensor and you use it. Kindly see the bottom portion. 2014, I used 443,000 liters per month. Can you see what we are today? Look at the drastic reduction. Seeing is believing. Simple, small spray atomizer. You can do it at home. And a sensor-based wash, and then a waterless urinal. Phenomenally changed the purpose. Of course, the closed loop water systems and things like that. And our water consumption got reduced drastically. So that's what we did on the water conservation. Moving on to the last slide. And I want you to see a couple of things on the right side. Please ignore the left side. Dr. Vinod talked about the electricity. I want to tell you something. My people always focus on the cost on the wrong thing sometimes, right? Penny wise, pound foolish. We took the top 10 variable cost. You know which is the number 1 in a factory on a top 10 variable cost? Electricity, energy. Energy, we focused on it. Our energy per annum was close to about 6 to 8 crores of rupees. Today, year on year, we save about 15%. Year on year, 15% of saving. I'm very serious, right? And then imagine on the right side, kindly take a look at it. Through the EMPs, 24.7 million units of electricity saved. Furnace optimization, 113,000 units saved. Lighting loads, 450,000. We talked about, Dr. Vinod talked about the air conditioning. For us, we have a centralized air conditioning, 768,000 units was saved. Through renewable energy, we saved 10.7 million units saved. Imagine, this is not a very complicated one. Simple waste wood, simple atomizer, simple sensors, simple energy saving concepts, and simple motivational stuff that we try and do, whether it is a safety or people or energy initiatives. These are some of the things that brought a huge change to Allison, and that's how, be it on environmental, be it on everything, we were very, very successful, and we wanted to share this. You're most welcome to come to our plant and take a look at it. Several organizations has visited us, and I'm sure we would like to share these best-in-class practices across the organization. Thank you so much.
That was a fascinating presentation. How you have put in practice what is in the textbooks. Amazing. I am going to, after this webinar, take up two offers which you made. One is, I am going to bring a lot of friends from industry to visit your plant to see ourselves. And two, I am going to take that.
Dr. Vinod, I'm not able to hear you.
Okay, it says I am audible by others. Are others able to hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, so even if Mr. Moses cannot hear us, let us all go to his factory to see firsthand and experience his hospitality. And two, we will take the 60-slide presentation which he made to the government of Tamil Nadu, and I am going to make it viral on social media so that industry can benefit. Now we have heard two very senior people from the industry giving very, very practical insights on how implementation of safety, health, and environmental standards can actually benefit the workers, the shareholders, and the stakeholders. So now we go to our third panelist, Ramapriya Gopalakrishnan, a distinguished lawyer. She's a graduate from the National Law School of India and New York University in 1997. She has been specializing in labor laws. She has several labor law publications to her credit. He's a resource person for the International Labor Organization on various projects of theirs. And she's also a much sought after speaker on labor law, especially the new labor code and various aspects of safety, health, and environment, the regulatory aspects. So we look forward to hearing from Ramapriya Gopalakrishnan, her views from the regulatory aspects and the new labor code. Over to you, Ramapriya.
Audio. No audio.
Yes. Now can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Vinod Surana for inviting me to speak in this webinar. We just had two very fascinating presentations from Dr. Radhakrishnan, who touched upon various practical aspects, and Mr. Moses' presentation, I found it absolutely fascinating. So now, I mean, they discussed more about the practical aspects of safety, health, and environment. Compared to what they said, mine is going to be rather theoretical, in that I'm going to be discussing the provisions of the Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code, one of the newly enacted labor codes. I thought rather than speak about the Factories Act or the Maternity Benefits Act or the Sexual Harassment Prevention Act, which are the existing laws relating to safety and health, I would delve into the provisions of the newly enacted code on occupational safety and health and working conditions, because the existing laws, I'm sure all of you would be familiar with. But before I go into the provisions of the code, I would like to give you a short background to the labor law reforms. In 1991, India adopted the new economic policy, and ever since India adopted the new economic policy, there has been a clamor for reforms from economic think tanks and from the industry. Various associations of employers have been clamoring for labor law reforms, saying that unless we have labor law reforms, India cannot be placed on the trajectory of rapid economic growth. The arguments made by the pro-reform lobby was that India has multifarious labor laws, the labor laws are too complicated, and the labor laws are archaic. And I mean, each of these points, I mean, there is some truth to each of these. There's no doubt, because many of India's labor laws were framed during colonial times. For example, we have the Workmen's Compensation Act, which is now called the Employees Compensation Act. That was enacted in 1923. The Trade Unions Act in 1926, and so on. So many of the labor laws, their origins were in colonial times, and they have not kept pace with the changing times. They don't take into account the automation which has taken place in the industry, and they have not kept pace with technological developments or the digitalization which has taken place. So there is a need to reform our labor laws. There is no doubt about it, to keep pace with the changing times. And it's also true that the labor laws are multifarious. We have as many as 44 central main labor laws. There are more than 44, but the major ones are 44. And then because labor is a subject in the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution, states also have lawmaking power in respect of the field of labor and trade unions and so on. And so there are 250 plus state labor laws as well. So 44 main central labor laws, 250 plus state labor laws. So this can create a complicated and confusing scenario. And all of you familiar with the labor laws will also know there are different definitions under different laws. So the definition of employee under one law may be one thing. The definition of workman or worker under another law may be another thing. Wages, there are different definitions. There's no one standardized definition. So there is also some truth to the point made that India's labor laws are complicated. So there was a demand for reforms on the ground, that there's a need to simplify our labor laws and to ensure that labor laws keep pace with the changing times. So another argument was that the existing labor laws, they hinder labor market flexibility, principally the freedom to hire and fire, and they hinder the ease of doing business. So these were the arguments put forth for labor law reforms. And from the mid-90s, there has been an initiative to bring about labor law reforms, but it couldn't take off for a long time until 2014. One reason for that is simply the government in power at the center, they didn't have the numbers to push through any major reforms. But there was a proposal for codification of the existing major central labor laws into codes. The Second National Labour Commission in the year 2002 had proposed that the existing labor laws be clubbed into 5 different codes, one on wages, one relating to industrial relations, one relating to occupational safety and health, one relating to working conditions, and one relating to social security. So this was the proposal made way back in 2002. But as I told you earlier, the government in power at the center didn't have the numbers, and so this codification project could not take off. But in the meanwhile, what happened is between 2002 and 2014, to some extent, state governments tried making some changes to the labor laws. In some states, some changes were made to the labor laws. And at the practical level, there were a lot of changes. Like there was a change in employment pattern. Earlier, the workforce used to have a larger number of confirmed or permanent workers. But from the mid-90s onwards, there has been the numbers of the flexible workforce have grown up drastically. There's been a great increase in the number of contract laborers, then persons designated as apprentices, trainees, learners, and so on. The precarious workforce has increased while the permanent workforce has decreased. So changes like these were brought about in practice. There may not have been changes under the law, but in practice there were various changes. And some economists refer to this phenomenon as reforms by stealth, because these were not reforms under the law, but at a practical shop floor level, the reforms were taking place, and this phenomenon is referred to as reforms by stealth. Then came the year 2014, when there was a change of guard at the center, and the present government in power came into power at the center. And since then, there has been a great impetus for the labor law reforms. In May 2014, soon after the present government came into power, labor law reforms began to be initiated at the state level by some states, and Rajasthan was the forerunner in this regard. In Rajasthan, in June 2014, the Apprentices Act was amended, Chapter 5B of the Industrial Disputes Act was amended, the Factories Act was amended, the Contract Labor Act was amended, and then some other states started following suit. In December 2014, the central government amended the Apprentices Act, making it easier for employers to engage apprentices and to engage them in a larger number of trades. Then from 2015 onwards, one after another, the central government started putting out the various draft codes. The first draft code to be out was the Code on Wages, which consolidates the provisions of 4 central laws relating to wages. Thereafter, the draft code on industrial relations was out the same year in 2015. Then subsequently, the draft code on social security was out. And then lastly, into the following year, the draft code, the first draft of the code on occupational safety and health was out. Initially, the government had proposed to have 5 codes. Working conditions was to be covered under a separate code, but then thereafter, it was decided to club the subject of working conditions also along with occupational safety and health. So now we have a code with a very long name, the Code on Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. So there were multiple versions of these drafts between the years 2015 and 20, and of each of these drafts. For example, the Code on Wages itself, there were 4 drafts. IR Code, there were 4 drafts. And these drafts will be put out in the public domain for stakeholders to give their comments and objections, if any. And then there would be a further revised version of the draft. And in 2019, August 2019, the Code on Wages got passed. That was the first code which was passed by the 2 houses of parliament. And last year in September 2020, 3 codes got passed. The Code on Industrial Relations was passed by the 2 houses of parliament, and so were the codes on social security and the Code on occupational safety, health and working conditions. But though the codes have been enacted by the parliament, the president has given his assent to the code and they were notified in the Gazette, but they have still not come into effect. And the reason for that is that the rules which are to be framed under the codes to make the codes operational, the rules have not yet been framed. The central government has, of course, framed draft rules under each of these codes. The draft rules were also put out in the public domain, and objections and suggestions, if any, have been invited. But the final rules have not yet been framed. Now, the government says, the central government says that by November 2021, the codes will come into operation. So perhaps the rules will be finalized in the period between now and November 2021. Now I'll share with you some aspects of the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code, which are different from the provisions of the existing laws. As you all know, the field, as far as the manufacturing sector is concerned, the field of safety and health is mainly covered by the Factories Act. So to a large extent, the provisions of the Factories Act have been retained in the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code, but there are also some major changes. So the major changes I'll show you by way of a PowerPoint presentation. Is there someone who can help me to bring up the presentation on the screen?
Ma'am, we're able to see your screen. You just have to open the presentation.
Okay.
Your screen is visible to us. We can see the browser on your desktop.
Okay. If you could just 1 second. For some reason, I'm not able to minimize and do this.
Yeah, you have minimized it. You can just open up the presentation so that we can see it.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to do this. Okay, if someone can help me with that.
Yeah, I'm just requesting for the control of your screen if you can allow me.
Yes. Otherwise, I can go ahead without the presentation also, because anyway, I know what is in there. So, okay. So the first thing in the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code, what I wanted to tell you all was that it consolidates the provisions of 13 enactments relating to occupational safety and health and working conditions. But the 13 enactments, it's not a comprehensive list. For example, the Sexual Harassment Act is not included in the code. So it's not a comprehensive list, but various laws, such as the Factories Act, the Building and Construction Workers Act, the Mines Act, the Dock Workers Act, then 2 laws relating to working journalists, then the Contract Labor Act, the Interstate Migrant Workers Act. The provisions of all these laws have been subsumed into the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code. So basically, to sum up, the provisions of 13 key laws relating to occupational safety and health have been subsumed into the Code on Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions. However, the list isn't comprehensive. There are certain laws on the subject which have been left out, and one example of that is the Sexual Harassment Act. Now, one key difference between the Factories Act and the Code on Occupational Safety and Health is the definitional aspect. Under the code, the definition of factory has been changed and the numbers have been doubled. Those of you who are familiar with the Factories Act will know that a factory is defined to mean a premises where a manufacturing activity takes place, where 10 or more persons are employed and the manufacturing activity takes place using power, or 20 or more persons are employed and the manufacturing activity takes place without the aid of power. Now, the numbers under the Occupational Safety and Health Code have been doubled. So this code applies to establishments where 40 or more persons are employed if no power is used, and 20 or more persons if power is used. So you can see from the very definition that the code will apply to a fewer number of manufacturing establishments. Considering that most of the manufacturing establishments in the country are in the MSME sector, many of them are micro industries, micro enterprises where hardly 10 are employed. And in the small scale industries, there are many where there are maybe up to 19 people, but not 20 or more. Thank you. So now I can take you through this. So as I told you, it consolidates the provisions of these 13 laws. And these are the Factories Act, Mines Act, Dock Workers Act, Building and Other Construction Workers Act, Plantation Labor Act, Contract Labor Act, Interstate Migrant Workmen Act. And then there are 2 laws relating to working journalists, the Motor Transport Workers Act, Sales Promotion Employees Act, BD and Cigar Workers Act, and Cine Workers and Cinema Theatre Workers Act. So a range of laws relating to occupational safety and health have been now brought under one umbrella. Now, as I told you, that the definition of factory has changed, the numbers have doubled. The implication of doubling the numbers is that a fewer number of establishments or a lesser number of establishments will be covered by the code. than the Factories Act at present, because the numbers are doubled. And as such, if you look at the the code, in the very beginning it says it applies to establishments where 10 or more workers are employed. There is an exception in case of employment establishments where any hazardous activity is carried on. If any hazardous activity is carried on, then regardless of the numbers, the code will apply. Even if there is just one employee, the code will apply if any hazardous activity is carried on. Then the code envisages the establishment of new boards called the Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Boards. One such board is to be set up at the central or national level, and then each state is also going to have an Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board. These boards are tripartite in structure, meaning they will have representation from the government and also representation from the employers and employees. And the national board, that it will advise the government on the implementation of the provisions of the code, and it will also lay down standards relating to occupational safety and health. The state board, that will help in the implementation of the code at the state level. Now, when it comes to conditions of work, again, there are certain major changes under the code. One is that it makes the issue of an appointment letter mandatory. All employees are required to be issued appointment letters. Now, the second subject I want to get into when it comes to conditions of work is that of the hours of work. The code specifies that the daily hours of work should not be more than 8. So the rule of 8 hours a day and 48 hours a week is retained. But the spread over the work day, there is a change. Now, the change is contained in the draft central rules framed under the code. If you look at the main code itself, there is no provision relating to spread over. But the draft rule says that the spread over the work day should not be more than 12 hours. At present, under the Factories Act, it is 10.5 hours. That has been increased to 12. When it comes to overtime work, again, there are changes under the code. For engaging a worker overtime, the code provides that the consent of the worker is required. It doesn't say if it's oral consent or written consent, but it says the consent of the concerned worker is required to engage him or her overtime. And then there is a huge increase in the number of hours of permissible overtime work. Under the draft central rules, a worker can be engaged for overtime work for 125 hours in a quarter. At present, it's 50. So 50 has been increased to 125 hours in a quarter. Night work for women also, there are some changes. The code provides that to engage a woman worker for night work, her consent is required. Again, it does not specify whether it's oral or written consent. And then the draft central rules, they specify that for the engagement of women in night work, adequate transport facilities should be provided by the employer. And the workplace should be well lit, the corridors and passage should be well lit. That is also specified under the central rules. And then safeguards should be taken to prevent sexual harassment when women are engaged for night work. When it comes to the employment of contract labor too, there are major changes. Those of you who are familiar with the Contract Labor Regulation and Abolition Act of 1970 would be aware that it applies to principal employers and contractors employing 20 or more contract laborers. Now, the provisions of the Contract Labor Act have been subsumed into Chapter 11 of the code, and Chapter 11 applies to establishments employing 50 or more contract laborers. So the earlier the number was 20 or more, that has been increased to 50 or more to give more flexibility to employers and contractors. And also the license to be issued to contractors, the period of validity of the license has been increased. The code provides for a validity of 5 years for a license which may be issued to a contractor. It also makes it easier for contractors to engage additional contract laborers. So all these provisions are aimed at giving greater flexibility to employers and contractors. And Section 10. Again, those of you who are familiar with the Contract Labor Act would definitely know Section 10, which provides for the abolition of contract labor in any work, operation, or process. The abolition had to be done by way of a notification by the appropriate government. Now, the Chapter 11 does away with the abolition provision altogether. Instead, it prohibits the engagement of contract labor in core activities, and it permits the engagement of contract labor in non-core activities. Now, the core activities are the activities for which the establishment is set up, or the activities necessary or incidental to the main manufacturing activity of the establishment. But again, while Chapter 11 prohibits the engagement of contract labor in core activities, there are major exceptions. If one exception is that if contract labor had been hitherto engaged for such manufacturing activity, the engagement of contract labor can be continued in such an activity. For example, take the case of a garment factory. If for the core work of manufacturing shirts, all along contract labor had been deployed, they can continue to be deployed. That's the sum and substance of saying that in core activities, they can continue to be engaged if they were already engaged. Then when there's a sudden spurt in orders or a sudden spurt in the volume of work in the factory, contract labor can be engaged for such work, even if it is a core activity. Non-core activities such as watch and ward, security, canteen, loading, unloading, courier services, all these are examples of non-core activities. Housekeeping, gardening. In non-core activities, there is no restriction on the engagement of contract labor. Contract labor can be freely engaged. This is another change brought about under the law. Now, when it comes to the employment of interstate migrant workers, there is again a change in the definition. Now, the subject of employment of interstate migrant workers at present is covered by the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Service Act of 1979. Under the 1979 law, interstate migrant workers are those who are engaged by or through a contractor in one state and for an establishment in another state. So by the definition of interstate migrant worker under the present law, workers who were directly recruited by the employer were excluded, because only those who were employed through a contractor were covered by the act. But under the code, even interstate migrant workers who are directly recruited by the employer, they are covered. So from a worker's point of view, this is a welcome change because it widens the definition. At the same time, a wage ceiling has been introduced. It says only those workers who earn 18,000 rupees or less per month will be included in the definition of interstate migrant worker. Then certain responsibilities have been ascribed to the principal employer and the contractor. And one is to ensure suitable conditions of work for interstate migrant workers, having regard to the fact that they are working in a different state. And then the code also specifies that employers and contractors have a duty to ensure that interstate migrant workers are covered by the Employers Provident Fund Act and the Employees State Insurance Act, and that they should have a facility of medical checkups. When it comes to enforcement provisions, again, there is a change in the code. The code provides for the appointment of inspectors cum facilitators in the place of inspectors. In the Factories Act, the term used everywhere is inspector only, but now under the code, it's inspector cum facilitator. And as this very term indicates, their functions are dual. One is they have to engage in the traditional function of inspection, but at the same time, they have to facilitate compliance by giving advice to employers on aspects relating to compliance. And another new feature of this code is it also provides for third-party audit and certification. But the details are yet to be spelled out. But if you read the provisions of the code, in so many places you will find the word expressions to be prescribed by notification. So we do not have a complete picture as of now, as many of the aspects, they're not even going to be regulated by the rules, but by notifications which the central or state government may issue. predominantly is the central government, because this expression is found over and over in the code, to be prescribed by the central government by notification. So unless the notifications are out, we will not have a complete picture. But nonetheless, these are the major changes that the code has brought about in the law relating to occupational safety and health. And another aspect is, apart from relegating many of the subjects to be regulated by notification, there are certain major changes as well. For example, if you take the Building and Construction Workers Act, those of you who have read the act and especially the rules framed under the act, you would know that the rules regulated the subject of safety of building and construction workers in great detail. At the act and rules taken together, they regulate the subject in great detail. But if you were to read the Occupational Safety and Health and Working Conditions Code, there is just one provision relating to building and construction workers, and that provision simply says that if someone has poor vision or is deaf, they cannot be engaged in building and other construction work. That is all. There's just one provision relating to that. Everything else is relegated to be regulated by notification, because the draft OSH rules are out. Even they do not contain regulate these safety aspects in detail. All that is going to be prescribed by notification. So unless the notifications are out, we are not going to have a complete picture relating to any aspect of occupational safety and health. Now, I had touched upon some safety aspects and aspects relating to conditions of work, which have been changed under the code. There are also some changes when it comes to health. If you're broadly, if you look at the Factories Act, there are provisions relating to safety and there are provisions relating to health, such as those relating to maintaining a hygienic environment, ventilation, drinking water, toilets. Those are all provisions, temperature. Those are all provisions relating to health. Now, those provisions are not going to uniformly apply under the code. All that is going to be regulated by the central government by notification, and those kinds of provisions are going to be applicable to the classes of establishments that will be prescribed by the government by notification. So many of the things which were uniformly applicable under the Factories Act will now have restricted application, because the central government is going to be regulated by notification, and the notification will apply only to certain classes of establishments. So as you can see clearly, employers are going to have much more flexibility in respect of the regulation of safety and health under the code. They're going to have much more flexibility, because the numbers under the code have doubled. So the very definition of factory has changed, and the numbers have been doubled from 10 to 20 and 20 to 40. By reason of the very doubling of these numbers, a large number of enterprises in the micro, small and medium industries category, I mean particularly the micro and small industries category, they are going to come out of the definition of the term factory, and then their safety aspects will not be regulated under the code. And thirdly, secondly, there's also going to be greater flexibility in the respect of the engagement of contract labor, because the numbers have changed. From 20, the numbers are up to 50. And then there is going to be flexibility in respect of enforcement also, because of this appointment of inspectors cum facilitators, whose role is changed from that of inspectors. And then also third-party audit and certification is provided for, which will also give some greater flexibility. Now, when it comes to the issue of safety and health in the micro, soft and medium enterprises, especially in the micro and small industries, some of these aspects were also touched upon by Mr. Radhakrishnan, some of the aspects that I put up on the board here. So there are concerns like there are untrained personnel, lack of proper supervision, flouting of safety norms, then lack of personal protective equipment, and so on. And
I will have to interrupt.
Sorry?
I will have to interrupt for a moment. We are running a little behind schedule, and we have to.
This is the last slide. I'm going to finish with this.
Please,
so,
please.
So, no doubt the micro and small industries, many of them are not even going to be covered by the code. But I think employers associations and employers would have to take the initiative to ensure that safety standards are maintained in the micro and small industry sector. Many of the firecracker industries and hazardous industries are existing in this sector, and therefore there is a need to ensure that the vital issue of safety and health, which concerns the lives and health well-being of people, are properly regulated. Even if they are not regulated under the law, employers associations should take the initiative to ensure that there are certain standards which are non-negotiable and which are followed by all industries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramapriya. That was a very detailed presentation covering various aspects, or rather every aspect of the labor law and framework in India. Now we have our final speaker, Mr. Vishal Chaturvedi, a very dynamic, articulate, and successful partner in the risk advisory practice at Deloitte. He has over 20 years of experience in leading risk and control solutions across various sectors in India and outside India. He has extensive multi-industry and cross-functional expertise. He has worked with clients on safety issues related to governance frameworks, and assessment of existing safety systems. He has been instrumental, or rather he has been a vociferous advocate of digitization for safety. Over to you, Mr. Chaturvedi. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Surana, and thank you, IIA, for having me here today. And thank you, all of the participants who've taken time out to spend with us this afternoon. I will talk about how technology is enabling, safety audits, as well as the entire piece around safety risk assessment. The time is perhaps limited for a vast topic like this, but what I thought I will do is to speak through examples and speak through experience of either work that we have done or what we are seeing and experiencing, not just in the Indian marketplace, but also the global marketplace, in terms of practices that organizations are following. If the slide can move on, please. Before I get into examples, I thought I'll spend a minute on, can the slide be changed, please? Next page. Before I get into examples, I thought it will be maybe good to spend a minute and a half on how we, at Deloitte look at the entire safety framework piece. This is a proprietary framework. Essentially, if you go from left to right, think of, we look at what the safety objectives are. And then obviously, from there move on to therefore what type of risks is an organization exposed to. Mind you that when we look at the entire framework, while we indeed look at operational issues, etc., but we view risk from a more holistic sense, and perhaps linking back to what Mr. Moses alluded to when he said a people, a system, and a business perspective to safety. And then come all the operating model components. These operating model components would be, essentially, how do you govern the entire process? What are the policies and the processes that one has? What is the behavior and culture in the organization, and how does one drive and measure that? And an important piece often overlooked in the Indian context is the entire data governance piece. And because that is what then enables a much richer analysis of what happens and also what is the art of the possible. Of course, we look at all of this in the context of a variety of work environments. It could be a factory, it could be an office, it could be a school or a public area. But then having all of this is good unless it is not managed, monitored, and remediated in a continuing cycle. All of this, is really of no use in a sense. So therefore, we look at how KPIs are sort of set out first and then measured, and incident reporting, whether it is external or internal. Of course, all of this is enabled not just by having the right sort of policies, etc., but also ongoing assessments. All of this, is unless it is managed, especially for larger scale organization, if it is not enabled by technology, I think that also becomes important. So that is how we sort of look at the entire safety framework piece. Embedded into it are all the regulations that are prevalent in the country and all the relevant standards, whether OSAS first or ISO 45001, in fact, even elements of OSHA. I'll now maybe, with this sort of a background, speak from examples. You'll see some pictures and dashboards on slides, but I'd like to take you through them, based on situations that we have been as a firm, and me personally as well. Next slide, please. This is an example of an organization with several sort of operating units. Before I tell you how technology enabled all of this, I thought it would be good to just spend a minute explaining to you what happened and what did we do. Essentially, we looked at the need of the client was to look at governance and policies, look at what the operational processes were, the entire piece around behavior and culture. And because these were public facing units, when I say units, I mean this is where people come in. I'm sorry, I can't get into more detail than that. So therefore, COVID-19 considerations were also very, very important, given you have exposure to public. In sort of looking at these assessments, and we use a technology platform, our own, to conduct these assessments, where we looked at a number eight or nine domains, including occupational health, or governance, or the awareness piece, culture, training, and looked at almost 500 plus sort of assessments, assertions within each assessment, and an assessment is nothing but a safety audit. And then we're able to sort of provide a very comparative, big picture view to management. Again, we were able to do this simply because for people sitting at the center, they could get a very diverse sort of consolidated view across a number of units, simply because there was an enabling sort of technology at play. If you could sort of go to the next slide, I will show you a sample output of how. This is essentially a spider web diagram, but I know it may be a little too small for everyone to read. But if you look at the purple line is in a way the baseline, which was a pass score across various elements that you see across the circle. The red line denotes the performance of one particular unit, and the green line denotes the performance of another unit. So one unit could be better off in their practices around usage, and wearing of PPE. One could be better off in hot works, but lower down, in a different area such as permit to work or contractor safety management system. So there are a number of dimensions that we could sort of evaluate and go back to management to give a top-down view, and we're able to then drill down to what actually happened across each units through a drill down facility. I'll go to the next example. Next page, please. This again is an example, from what we are seeing organizations doing. If you see, this entire platform provides an overview to the entire organization. If I go from left to maybe I can take you up on what are the major components in the platform. It has an overview, which is your organizational sort of picture of where one is. It's an organization-wide view of where the organization sits on various matters. You can have incident logging, you can have risk assessment, you can have investigations into the incidents or separate investigation that one may have conducted, and all inspection and testing results are reside within the platform. If you look at the bottom left pie chart, it tells you a breakup of what was the finding, actions taken, all of that. It gives you a locational view, and it provides in fact, the unique thing about this situation is that if you see carefully, this includes the organizational view on not just safety, but physical security as well as cyber security. So here is an example of utilizing an asset and optimizing sort of its usage across various seemingly unrelated domains. So an organization has been able to integrate not just its cyber issue tracking, but also the entire piece around safety. And if you see, it also gives the DART rate. So essentially, this is one number that the organization sort of looks at in terms of days away, restricted, or transferred. Again, a great example of how technology platforms are being utilized today by organizations, in enabling a better view, a tighter view, and a view that is enabled by technology across sort of a geographic expanse. Again, in a platform like this, like the one that I spoke about earlier, one has the ability to sort of drill down. So you can start from a top-end view, go to a geography view, go to a domain view, topic view, open findings. All sorts of slices and dices of information will always be available. Great tool in the hands of not just safety practitioners, but even top management, to be able to make sure that practices as intended are in fact the process, and the practices are in fact operating in the manner that they were designed. If we can go on to the next page. This again, I think, very, very, very interesting, and I'll speak about lay emphasis on maybe a couple of points here. See, safety, as we all know, is a topic where it's everybody's job, right? And Mr. Moses even used the same words. And therefore, in a topic like this, the ongoing reinforcement, right, of practices, learning, education, I think is something that is very, very critical, and all safety practitioners will sort of agree to that. What we were able to do in a client situation, I mean, while they had the usual notices, they had they had the morning meetings, etc. But uh, I mean, the CEO was very concerned that they are spread across the country. They People use different languages. He was not very sure uh, how much all of this really sticks and people understand. We actually, what we did was, I mean, they had safety SOPs, etc. But what we did was, uh, by using not just safety experts, but also visualization experts, uh, were able to create content that was very, very appealing, and in terms of cognition was very fast to capture. And this was not just a video playing. This had content which was animated with, and rich animation which people understand, engage in, because finally what is important is that a person engages and therefore absorbs. I mean, we all have been in factories, offices, etc., where there is either a large notice displayed on safety practices, or there is a screen which runs a video. uh, but what we were able to do was to create content in such a manner that ability, the absorption of that information improved. Number two, we were able to create that content in 5 different languages and Indian vernacular languages. So we had Gujarati, we had Hindi, we had Kannada, we had Telugu, and I think one more. And therefore, what this did was that it really helped that last man. Sort of everyone was seeing it, uh, in a language that was familiar to them. Mind you, this formula did not work in a client situation, because in Chhattisgarh, we realized that Oriya changes very rapidly with very short distances. Oriya is a language, and therefore it didn't work very well. What also we did, and what worked very well in the current situation, was that we created assessment modules on top of the training. And the assessment modules were actually a video game on a phone. You could actually play a video game if you had a smartphone on your phone, or you could play it on a desktop as an app, which was kept in the premises at various places. So again, it helps people. What happens is that because you get engaged so much, you learn faster, and therefore was quite a unique and a delightful experience in the case of this organization. I'll move on, and maybe let's go to the next page. I'll move on and even talk about the art of the possible. When I say art of the possible, this is not something that is not already happening. But again, what we are seeing practices being adopted now is to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning, especially from camera and video content, where a camera, obviously a CCTV or a camera captures a feed, right? That feed is then sort of using machine learning, and after that, artificial intelligence is able to recognize faces, and therefore is able to identify a person involved in an unsafe practice. I know that the pictures below could be a little small, but the first picture on the bottom left shows you a man without a helmet. So it's supposed to wear PPE but is not wearing PPE. Now this can get sort of uh, you can identify, as this data keeps getting captured, you can identify patterns and activities. And when I say pattern, it could be time of day, it could be type of people, it could be section, it could be subsection in a factory. Is it a warehouse problem? and therefore your ability to sort of generate insight and act upon it is greatly enhanced. In this example, this whole module was also integrated with SMS alerts, such that when an unsafe act is identified, a location-wise SMS will go, which reports that unsafe act, and therefore becomes an action point almost immediately. So therefore, the A, you act fast. B, you communicate even faster, because suddenly everyone in that location, in that factory, in that warehouse knows, hey, listen, somebody messed up, right, because of ABCD. Great relatable example to the S report that Mr. Moses mentioned. Again, something that then becomes more collaborative and essentially becomes everyone's job, right? So this is how technology can be leveraged to sort of integrate a lot of data points and bring enhance safety awareness, safety practices, etc. I'll have one more example on the art of the possible, and it's quite a fascinating example. I've seen this at play in Australia and in South Africa. Essentially, if you look at the middle, the red boxes, essentially talks about traditional, incident related activities, right? Incident, details, what happened, what was the equipment used, what was the immediate impact, where did it happen, what was the date and time, all of that. But given the times that we live in, we also have a lot of information which could be pre-incident, relate to pre-incident attributes. It could relate to employee demographics. It could relate to where did that person come from, what is his background, what is his age, was he working 2 shifts last night, did he come back, did he work 2 shifts including night shift, or came back very early, the next day. It could relate, the data could relate to what type of what type of experience that person has, what has been his training history. um, uh, you could relate it to, is this a symptom of something happening in a particular team, what is the makeup of that team, and you could join all of this information together. Earlier I told you about how an internal system like camera feeds or CCTV feeds could be sort of integrated to generate insight. And this now, traditional plus pre-incident attributes, which are again internal to the organization, can also be connected with public data. What was the weather? Was it raining? What was the time of the day? What was the day of the year? Is it in a particular season? And you could connect all of this really to generate sharper insight and root causing of when, how, and why incidents occur. And with this, hopefully, will come also a time where, depending on the size and sort of time over which data such as this is collected and analyzed, one could almost be in a predictive mode, saying at this time of the year with this weather, I may have ABCD, and therefore you start taking preventive actions. I'll stop here. This is all I had to sort of take you through on really how we are seeing technology enabling safety practices and also particularly audits. If we have time, happy to take questions later on. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vishal. That was very, very fascinating. I found it very fascinating. You covered a lot of points, especially how you have used technology in your client places. So I believe we have, no, not believe, we have certainly overshot our time. and so we will take 2 or 3 questions. There's a question from Mr. Radhakrishnan. You made a point that you had changed the belts, the safety harness, from a 1.3 kg requirement of a statutorily required model to a different model which weighed 1.2 kilos, but was not recognized statutorily. Now, how will the insurance treat it, and how will the courts treat it if there is an incident?
No, this is the 1.2 kg harness was not designed by us. It was already designed by some other company, the competitive company of the major manufacturers in India. So one company's brand is that 75. The same thing. This is also designed and manufactured by some other company in Mumbai, and they also proved and they gave all the details to the try that nothing will happen. The strength wise, the basic for the harness, the only thing is the strength of the ropes used and the material used. It was proved.
Is it certified as per the regulation?
Yes, certified for use in India, as well as they are exporting to other companies also. But in spite of all, behind this, there are some other problems are there. I think we cannot.
Okay. The next question is for Mr. Moses and Mr. Vishal. You both made a point of engaging all employees in the sheep process. Mr. Moses made a point that the number of eyes equals 2 times the number of employees, and therefore, when everybody is involved, the number of red flags go up and it gets addressed, and therefore incidents are almost zero. And Vishal also reflected the same sentiments during his speech. The question is, how do you get all employees involved in the process? I mean, if it is a mandate from the management, normally there is a resistance. First with Mr. Moses, then with Mr. Vishal.
Okay, I think it's part of the culture that we brought it right from day one on this Greenfield project. I understand if it is an existing organization with 50-20 years, to bring in the change is going to be extremely difficult. Of course, the top leadership matters a lot in this regard. From the day one thing we were very clear. When we were building this facility in a 27 acres property, there were about 1,000 people working. East, west, north, and south of my property had fatal accidents in Varagadam. I'm talking very seriously about it. Every construction that happened in Varagadam Industrial Belt, almost, I won't say all, but mostly had this kind of an incident, right? So one thing that we made it very clear was right from the finance to the application engineering, product engineering, or human resource or manufacturing, supply chain, purchasing, we all will pitch into this culture, and we all will protect every employee who works in this facility. So when I talk about the 27 acres of the facility with 1,000 people working 3 shifts round the clock, right from 13 years back till date, our culture remains the same. Safety is for everyone. It's just like food for everyone. I mean, pandemic, can you say that finance will not be involved into the, say, health and environment? Just imagine what will happen. Or the application engineering saying, I'm working from home, I'm not going to follow all these things. It's not going to work out. So just like the new life that we are, new living that we are having right now, safety became part of the culture, that the first person whom we hit was the head finance, right? And that's how we brought in. So culture became like, in the 36 modules, most of them are non-technical. I want to tell you that. Finance, to the human resource, to the application, to the product engineering, to the marketing and sales is in this 36 safety modules. The culture started from there itself.
Vishal, what's your take on that?
So I think the question had an element built in saying there is resistance from management. I thought I heard you say that. I think I mean you've heard a business owner's perspective, right? There is no resistance. It is the number one priority.
So my point, what I meant was, when there is a instruction from the management, the labor or the people working down below always have an instinctive resistance. That is what I meant.
Okay, thanks. So I think the most important thing is culture, tone at the top, as you know, we call it differently. The other is continuous reinforcement. I spoke about how education and learning is very, very important in a matter like safety. Number three, enforcement. If there is resistance, enforce it. So you'll always have to balance the two, obviously. Look, we now live in times where you know, to the example I think which Mr. Radhakrishnan took, 11 fatalities in his first 8 years. Right, sir? That cannot happen
Yes, sir.
anymore. You have external stakeholders, you have private equity. If you are listed, you have public money, you have regulator. That cost is too high.
You have social media.
Exactly.
Here I want to tell one thing, because this has happened because initially the management hesitated to spend on creating awareness and conducting trainings and the proper sector. This was happened. Being a management man, we can't travel beyond certain limit. So over a period when they experienced the huge losses because of these fatal accidents, finally they accepted to improve. Immediately we catch it and implemented all the things. Then we spend a peaceful period of services.
So it's interesting. Mr. Radhakrishnan, Mr. Moses, and Mr. Vishal speak about continuous training and learning.
Yes,
absolutely.
So, Mr. Vishal, when you consult with clients, how do you have like a training plan through a calendar for the year for a manufacturing facility? How does it work? Or does the management ask you to?
So it could be a mix. It will always have some standard modules, some may be non-standard. Business is a non-standard, as you know. I mean, firms like ours work with a variety of industries. So therefore, things may have to be fine-tuned based on you know, practices, right? If so, I'll give you maybe two examples. In one case, the entire focus on, look, all of us spoke a lot about employees, right, as partners, etc. But a lot of your partners in the sense of customers, vendors, logistic providers, contractors, they are equal partners and they spend a lot of time in your premises, right? So in one client situation, the entire focus was on contractor safety. So therefore, you know, you will tune your or devise things or design things based on that need. In another instance, if there is a business which is a tolling business, right? I can't take manufacturing concepts to a tolling business. I can't take a manufacturing sort of content or elements to a chain of theaters. They all have very different risks, exposures, and nuances to their business. So a lot of this is non-standard. Actually, you can have very little standard, but when you want to make it stick, it needs effort.
Like you said, enforcement.
Yeah. No. What I meant here was when you want it to stick. I mean, the content to stick. You know, people to absorb. It is important that you do non-standard. Actually, that's what I meant. You have to make it bespoke to the need.
Yeah, those slides which Mr. Moses played keep going round and round in my mind, of everyday morning meetings and weekly meetings and red tags to internalize the learning.
No, I'm going to use red tag as well as report.
What we do on the training program, like what Vishal said, I mean, I liked his entire presentation, is for the operators, we have something called skill development program. For the staffs like us, we have a competency development program. We do a skill mapping, we do a competency mapping. When we do the mapping, we get the gap analysis. In the gap analysis, it very clearly opens up Where are areas to focus related to safety, health and environment? The gap analysis opens a big Pandora box. With that gap analysis, you list the open points and prepare a 12-month rolling calendar and go by the plan versus actual and adhere to it. And the biggest gap is safety, health and environment is the biggest gap that you find. Let me tell you, this is very, very open. You can say all your KPIs are zero, best, everything. If you take my calendar on the boardroom, the big gap is on these three subjects.
Can I say something? Just one
Yes, sir.
iota. Yeah. A very senior professional in our country told me that we are a very our perception of risk is very high. Our ability to absorb risk is very high, and therefore you see that we don't wear seat belts, we don't wear helmets, right? We all grew up without all those things because as a culture, our risk-taking ability is very high. I don't know if it's true, but it seems true on the roads.
I tend to agree with you because there is also inbuilt in the conscience about the jugaad way of life. We will deal with it as and when it arises. Okay, one last question, and I think this is for Ramapriya. We speak about regulatory aspects of SHE audits. We speak about regulations, the new labor codes, etc. The question is about judicial delays. What is the impact of judicial delay on safety, health and environment? For example, yesterday in my own office, I received the first appeal of a case which was filed by an employee in 1996. And so now we are going to start the next round of litigation after almost 24 years, and it could go on for another 24 years. The Supreme Court Green Bench as well as the Green Tribunals are passing orders. Looks very good on paper, but enforcement is one issue. But even before we reach the order stage, the delay in the whole process. So your take on the impact of judicial delays on safety, health and environment?
Definitely it has an impact, unfortunately. I just want to give you the example of one writ petition relating to the firecracker industry. The government of Tamil Nadu in 2010 or 11, it had passed a GO to include the firecracker industry under the hazardous, to bring it under the schedule to the Factories Act, classifying it as a hazardous industry. In 2011, the Madras High Court granted a stay of the GO. To my knowledge, till now the stay is yet to be vacated. And in the meanwhile, there have been so many major accidents in the firecracker industry. And similarly, we used to see in the context of minimum wages also. The government would notify minimum wages, then there would be stay orders which would run for years, and so So the judicial delays affect every aspect, whether it comes to minimum wages or safety and health. It's all impacted by judicial delays. So I think the judiciary also needs to be sensitized so that in issues relating to safety and health, matters are disposed of expeditiously and not kept pending for years on end. I think that has to be done, but who will bell the cat? It's not easy to talk about sensitizing the judiciary.
Speaking of belling the cat, I think the All India Manufacturers Association can take the lead. Our senior national vice president is here. I am a senior vice chairman of the Tamil Nadu board. I think we will engage with the 4 panelists and also other members to make a representation, and we will see what we can do to voice the concerns of the industry. We have run over time, so I am now going to hand over to Mr. Vidyadharan for his concluding remarks. Over to you, Mr. Vidyadharan. It has been a fascinating experience, a lot of learning. I have made a lot of notes. Thank you very much, specifically to each panelist. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Vidyadharan. You are on mute, sir. You have to unmute, sir.
Well, sir, he's unmuted, but there is some network issue. That's the reason we're not able to hear him.
Okay. So if I may take the liberty on behalf of Mr. Vidyadharan as a member of IIA, on behalf of all the three organizers, the All India Manufacturers Association, the Institute of Internal Auditors, and Surana International Attorneys, I would like to thank our four very eminent, very experienced, very articulate panelists for having put in a lot of hard work to come up with detailed, simple to understand presentations. You have made a lot of impact on the listeners. I believe each one of the attendees is going back with a long list of learnings and takeaway points. Thank you very much for spending this time on a Saturday morning with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.